So we've got some really good questions today. Let me bring up the first one. Um, how would you work with somebody who wants to cut their sugar addiction? Well, this is a huge area, and it, it, uh, it's hard to say because I don't know why they're having this sugar. Okay, so a lot of it is purely down to lifestyle, and so, for example, if you are a single man living on his own and enjoys drinking, going out, doesn't have any responsibilities, prepares and makes or buys all of his own food. Well, that's a very different situation than a 17-year-old girl living at home and all of their food is prepared for and cooked for by their parents or their mother or whatever it might be. So the first thing you need to look at is, now the reason why I say that is because men who tend to live on their own tend to do much more harmful practices and engage in much more uh, negative lifestyle traits than people in family units, especially when it comes to like alcohol and food and smoking, stuff like that. If there's nobody there to kind of say no. Um, so now a lot of people get brought up on sugar and they are used, and sugar is used to reward that person. You know, you get biscuits, cookies, sweets, treats for being good. I've got compression gloves. And so sometimes people will use sugar because they are feeling low. They're feeling lonely. They're feeling tired. They're feeling stressed or depressed. And so there's that thing called, eating your feelings. So when people are feeling low, they will eat something to change their mood. Now, if you're eating food to change your mood, it's quite dangerous, The first thing that I would sort of recommend when it comes to sort of getting control of sugar is to get a CGM. So I've actually got a CGM on at the moment. You can't see because it's under a sticker there. You can get a 2-week free trial from Libra. I don't know what it's called, but Freestyle Libra, 2-week free trial, and that will tell you what your sugar is actually doing to you and to your body. So that's where I would start with somebody, and I would just tell them not to change anything, but just to observe what their sugar levels are actually doing, because this gives you real-time feedback every minute it takes a reading, and it tells you what your body is actually doing. You then want to ascertain why they are having this overindulgence in sugar, and at what point, what are the triggers for this, and why can't they control themselves? Now, again, a lot of the time it's to do with sort of lifestyle, and sometimes people think they're being really healthy when they're not. So they will do lots and lots of cardio work, which will make them really hungry, and they will tend to go for high carbohydrate value food, the sweets, the cakes, whatever it might be. And so instead, you need to look at how they're spending their time, who they're spending their time with, what are their lifestyle goals going to be, and then you want to work from there. So a lot of the time, these things aren't therapy, and IEMT is not going to make any bit of difference, really. Whether if people have been through a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, a lot of negative experiences, and they're eating as a form of escapism, then obviously you can really start to target those things. And also, sort of, overeating has a lot to do with identity as well. So this part of this person that can't be controlled. Well, where is this part? How old is this part? What's going on around this particular part? So that's how I begin to sort of break it down. First of all, find out what's therapy and what's not therapy. And then the stuff that is therapy, start to break that down to, is this a form of escapism? And the identity around this person that can't control these eating patterns. I have 2 questions. Excellent. Does it make sense to make an ebook explaining what is IEMT and its applications? Or is it better to make one focused on just one type of problem, how IEMT can help overcome that? 2, I've created a Facebook page and a Facebook group about IEMT. What shall I post on the Facebook page and on the private group? And does it make sense to post the same, as I'm not seeing what type of content should be made private? Okay, so let me just make things clear. excuse me, I create PDFs and stuff like that around IEMT because I train people in IEMT. Okay, so I train people. I train hypnotherapists, counselors, RTT, loads of different types of people in IEMT practitioner level. If you're a therapist, unless they're going through the association page or unless they're specifically trying to find somebody who does IEMT in their area or something, people aren't looking for IEMT. Okay, what they are looking for is the solution to the problem that they're currently having, where IEMT can actually be used if you can demonstrate this with your examples and your case studies, your testimonials and reviews, you can actually help somebody. But what you have to do is I would not, if I was an IEMT practitioner, I wouldn't be trying to educate people in IEMT at the beginning. I'd be trying to demonstrate that I was an authority in the problem that they have. So let's say that they have a fear of flying, okay? And I wanted to become, well, let's just say I wanted to become an authority in fears of flying. All my content is going to be around fear of flying. I'm going to produce free content, which is going to be the 7 things that you can do to reduce your anxiety when flying. Oh, somebody's posted a question. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, I can't see it. Why can't I see it? So I would actually create the content. I can't see why this isn't being posted. So I would produce, again, I produce content around the fear of flying, not IEMT. I would introduce IEMT after I had their email and after we made sort of contact, after they were following me, but I'm not going to lead with it because nobody knows what it is. I am going to educate people in it, but the way I like to educate people in this is through video interviews and evidence-based stuff for what I'm doing with clients, and I will actually then introduce the IEMT there. Does that make sense? And again, same to do with the Facebook page. You want to have a Facebook page for your business, and then again, if you're going to have a Facebook group, don't have it about IEMT. There's nobody's looking to join that. You can have a Facebook group around overcome your fear of flying. That would make a lot of sense. Okay, but you don't want to produce, personally, I don't think you should be producing uh, ebooks around IEMT, especially the beginning of sort of this. I'm just trying to find this comment. Oh, I can't find it. How bizarre. Um, so yeah, so why are you trying to make a group around that? I certainly wouldn't. So let me see if I can find this question. Oh, sorry. It's just it came up. Somebody put a comment. Michelle Pearson Taylor commented, but I just can't find it, unfortunately. Let's see if I can find it. No, it's not playing, unfortunately. So yeah, so I wouldn't be producing content around IEMT. I'd be producing content around the thing that you help people with. I hope that makes sense. Become an authority figure in that niche. Really, that's what you want to be sort of aiming for. Let me just get to the next question. Hi, Matt. I've worked with a client who has deep anxiety around passing a driving test. We worked through our anxiety using 3 pillars. I wouldn't have done that. I also think it would be I also thought it would be helpful to work on the driving test as a future event. How would I go about this? Well, when you think about the driving test, what happens? You know, it's very, very simple. When you think about the driving test, basically what happens? What's the feeling? How strong is the emotion that kind of comes up? So with driving it, now I only do anxiety, the 3 pillars, if the client doesn't know what the problem is and they're suffering just kind of generalized anxiety. If somebody comes to me and say they have anxiety about a particular thing, i.e. a driving test, okay, I don't know, I wrote that and signed it, i.e. a driving test, I want to explore that. So I want to know what it is about the driving test that's causing this anxiety, what's causing this fear, what's causing this problem. So when you think about this driving test, what's the problem? Well, I don't like being judged. Right, I've got something here. And what else? I don't like I don't like it when cars overtake me. I don't like it being on the motorway. I don't. So what you want to do is you actually want to get out the actual precise things that are the problems with this driving test and passing this driving test. It could be like, if I don't pass this driving test, I'll have wasted all this money. I can't afford to redo it. Blah 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 blah. So you want to pull out the actual specific reasons, because they might be a very confident driver, but they just don't like being judged by others. Well, something like that, you know? So that's how I would do it. You can also do some identity stuff around that as well, about this person who is anxious about becoming a driver. You can do an I, me, self, you from the person within the driving test. That's what I'd do. So you really want to find out what's causing, or what is, it's not the linchpin, but what is the most significant part of the driving test that's actually causing this person a problem. And that is what you then focus on. So it could be like, so I don't like the sense of being on a motorway. So when you think about being on a motorway, how strong is that feeling? 9. How familiar? Very. And when's the first time? Did it? And you're off to the races. So again, I only use the anxiety, the 3-pillar model, if the client doesn't know what the problem is, or if they're having sort of generalized anxiety, just a general state of being sort of lost, kind of not knowing what's going on. This is a very specific problem. The client has come to you and said, I'm worried about this. There you go. Don't bother with the 3 pillars in this opinion, in this instance, in this opinion. I worked with a client for the first time last week. After the session, they said they felt tired and spaced out. Is this normal? It can be. Okay, so there's no normal of what actually happens after IEMT, but there are lots of different observations. People have reported headaches. People have reported feelings of euphoria. Some people have felt very emotional, which again is sort of quite common. Now, the reason why people can feel quite emotional is because we're working on a lot of negative, horrible stuff. So people can feel emotional because they've been given to access this and relive this. And also because a sense of relief that they no longer have to deal with this in their lives. They no longer have to carry this emotional baggage in their lives, and they can begin to let go of this. The brain takes a lot of energy, and when we're doing IEMT, we're using the brain, and we're using the brain in a different way than it's usually used, especially in like waking states. And this can and also when we're doing IEMT, it can be very emotional, which can be very tiring. So I always advise my clients to not go back to, excuse me, not go back to work or do anything important after the session. What I have found produces the best results if the client can get out into nature. If they can just get out of the house, out of the office, out of the wherever they might be, out of your clinic, and just spend an hour going for a walk and just letting the brain do what it needs to do, they'll have so many aha moments. So that's what I generally think would work best. If they can get out, get some fresh air, get something so they can actually sort of ponder on it and think about it. So they're not just going straight back into childcare or whatever it might be. So yeah, it can happen. Now, generally, with the headaches, and I know she didn't have a headache, but if you move the eyes too fast, generally that's what tends to cause the problems. So when I'm working with somebody, I make sure that the speed is okay for them as well. I've just got a couple more questions. If you do have any questions, please do put them, and I am going to have got another 5 minutes here. Can IEMT be done under hypnosis? No. Why would you do that? Hypnosis is, no, you don't want to do IEMT under hypnosis. You want somebody fully conscious and engaged and working with you. You don't want them in a state of hypnosis or anything. No, you don't want to do that. I'm trained in hypnosis and hypnotherapy, but what I do is I use the stuff that we do in a session and I cement it in um, by creating a hypnotic script around the session and then actually just giving it to the client to listen to in between the sessions. So I'm not using hypnosis with IMT, I'm using hypnosis after IMT to cement in the IMT work. But no, you don't want to be hypnotizing people then doing IMT. Is IMT best done in person or online? So I used to work from, in fact, I did a session in central London the other day. So I used to work from different locations in central London. I used to work from Bank area. I used to work from Tooley Street, which is London Bridge. I worked from there for a long time. I worked from Harley Street for a little while, but I didn't like that. I used to work from Central Street, which is near Old Street. So I've had about 5 or 6 different clinics that I've worked from in London. And since the pandemic, it's all online pretty much. I'm going to start, because now I'm based in York, I might actually start doing some in-person sessions in York, actually. So everything has pros and cons. What I have found is that when somebody comes to see you in a session, they can be in quite a state by the time they get there. Especially if I'm working with somebody in London who's not used to London. And they will get that because London's a difficult place to be all the time, really. And people don't realize how big it is and how far things are and, how long it takes to get anywhere and why everyone's in such a bad mood. So when they turn up at my clinic, they'd arrive at like their session for like midday and they'd be like, oh, London's beating me up, and they're in a bad mood, and I have to like calm them down, give them water and say, chillax. When I'm working with somebody at home or online, they're in their surroundings. They've got the cat over there. They are relaxed, they are calm. And I actually find weirdly it can actually be more intimate working with somebody online because I can see their face. I'm much closer to them online than I am in person. I find working in person to be really good and very effective. But I personally prefer working online now because I've just done it so much. Um, Once you actually map out your, this is not mirrored, so that's not right. So, but once you get that working properly, um, I personally prefer working online for the types of clients that I do. However, other people work in person. I really find it's just a personal preference, and I'm happy to work both, but working in person is more expensive for both people involved. It takes a lot more time because you've got to go to the office and they've got to go to the office. And I don't think the results are that much different to justify that time and expense for me personally. So as long as you get it, if you haven't trained to do it online, I suggest to do an online training because some people do in-person training. So if you want to do online training, come see me because I specifically train people to work online. Okay, if anybody's got any last questions, please do put them down. Please do put them. I know it says here somebody's put a comment, but I just can't see it. I don't know why it's not showing up here. Oh, okay. Hi, Matt. How would you approach somebody with bad health anxiety, which has led to food fear due to symptoms worsening after eating? So somebody with bad health anxiety, um, this sounds like a medical thing. If somebody's having problems after eating, it sounds like an IBS kind of issue, does that? So I'd first of all have that checked out. It also sounds like there could be certain intolerances, could be lactose, could be gluten. So I'd get those checked out first of all. You can do sensitivity tests. Then, well, what are the feelings? What are the emotions around it? Okay, so how bad do they feel afterwards out of 10 when they think about eating? So what's the problem? I always like to break these things down to what's the problem and then where can IEMT be actually interjected into this? So when you start to break these things down, what actually is the problem? All right, so health anxiety. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, I just think about dying all the time. Excellent. How strong is that feeling? How familiar? And when's the first time? So I have worked with people like this. Again, everybody's different though. So if they feel bad after eating, how bad, how strong, how familiar? Okay, guys, we are at 20 minutes. I am going to finish it now just so I can put this on Instagram without editing. If you have any other questions, please do put them below and I'll get to them next week. See you later.